Hey, what's happening, guys? It is Patrick, aka Patty Two Wheels. Just out for a ride today. I'm sort of finishing up. I was just thinking about it. I hadn't really done a comparison between my bike that I had in college, a 2004 CBR600RR, and the bike I currently have. The bike I have now is a 2002 CBR600F4i. So, back when I was first looking at bikes in school, I kind of liked the looks of the Honda, but I wasn't really particular to either one. And when I was doing my model research, I saw the F4i and the RR were both similarly spec'd bikes, so I did some research to sort of try to figure out which one is best, or which one, I should get should the opportunity arise. It was interesting. There were basically two types of opinions. The first was from owners of RRs. And the owners of RRs would always say, definitely go with the RR. It's a more powerful bike. There's better handling, and it's the newer, better version of the F4i, essentially. Which, I want to just state for the record, that's all true. The RR, if you do a year-by-year comparison of the RR and the F4i, the RR will have more power. It will usually have better suspension components, which means it handles better. And it is more up-to-date. I know that. I know that the RR is technically better. It's a technically superior bike. But then, so the opinions I got from the F4i owners, or more experienced riders, they would say, you know what? RR and the F4i, they're really close performance-wise. Yeah, the RR has an edge, but at the end of the day, both of these are going to be fine for street use. And it's really going to come down to your riding ability. And my takeaway from that was, yeah, they're similar bikes, but the RR is better. And I gotta be honest, after riding them both, the F4i owners and more experienced owners, they were right. For street use, there's really not a ton of difference between the F4i and the RR. And maybe it's just, that I haven't ridden the RR in a few years, but the F4i and the RR, they feel eerily similar. Like, really, I'm surprised by how similar they feel. One of the things that was really a hang-up for me was power. I noticed that the RR, I think it had like 110 or 115 brake horsepower of the model years I was looking at. The F4i, I think it was sub 100. It was like 95 or something like that. At the end of the day, the F4i had less power than the RR. Me being new to motorcycles, this was the first bike I'd ever got. I thought, well, obviously I want the one with more power, But really, guys, I gotta be honest, the power feels just about the same on this one as it did on the RR. And in fact, I can actually get the front wheel up on this one, on the F4i, in first gear. And I was never able to do that on the RR. Now, I might have just been a little bit wussy and I might have been a little bit scared, but yeah, I can get the front wheel up in first gear, no problem. Get going, hammer the throttle, it comes right up. Stock sprockets, stock chain, everything. So, yeah, power. Yeah, the RR has more on the street. I would say it's not significant. So, handling. Yes, it is true that the RRs have better suspension components. especially the 2005 and on models, they had inverted forks, whereas all the F4Is have the standard forks. So yeah, obviously, those are going to perform a little better. But again, honestly, I think I probably ride better now than I did with my double R. And, you know, maybe that's from experience. Maybe, you know, I don't know. Maybe it's from a bunch of different things. I just feel like it's much easier to take corners on this bike. I don't know what it is. So, yeah. The F4i, the suspension components are probably not as nice as the ones on the double R, but I really doubt you're going to notice on the street. I sincerely doubt it. Your riding skill is going to matter a whole lot more than whether your forks are inverted or what type of rear shock you have. So, third, were looks. Now, the F4i, I feel like it's, you know, today, I feel like it's held up well. You know, I feel like she's aged well. Especially when you look at other modern day bikes, you know. And I gotta be honest, I'm just not a huge fan of the new 600 double Rs. I think it's like the 2014 and on model. You redesigned it, and I just feel like they beat it with the ugly stick. But in fairness, I sort of feel that way about the new Yamaha R1 and the new Ducati bikes. I just don't really like the looks as much as I did with the previous generation. So, but yeah, so back then, the looks were even closer, you know. But, you know, I always just felt like the double R looked a little bit better. You know, now that I'm sort of looking back on it, you know, these bikes really do look remarkably similar. But, again, for street riding, it doesn't really matter how your bike looks. You just have to like it. And, you know, I do have to admit, when I first got this F4i, I wasn't a huge fan of how the front of it looked, you know, with the connected headlamp. But, you know, it's really grown on me. And I'm really starting to love this bike. I've fallen in love. So yeah, those were all points that I thought mattered when I was choosing, you know, the 600 double R or the F4i. And after riding both on the street, I could be honest with you guys, for street riding with some spirited twisties, you know, the 600RR and the F4i are both going to serve your needs equally well. They're both going to do a great job, and they're both going to give you, you know, that thrill you're looking for. Now, if you're going to the track, you're going to do some serious track riding, like you're going to do some amateur racing, then you might want to consider getting the 600 double R instead of the F4i. But, you know, if all you're doing is tooling around, going to some track days, the F4i is still plenty of bike to do even that. And, you know, I'll take it a step further. If all you're doing is casual track days, I would recommend the F4i over the double R, just because you can find them cheaper since it's an older bike. And since it's less in demand than the double R. Yeah, so I'd even go as far as to recommend the F4i over the double R for track days, unless, you know, you're competing. And even then, if you have some serious skills on an F4i, you can light up RRs and leader bikes no problem. It just really depends on the skill. Now, if you're about as skilled as all the other competitors, then yeah, the bike will make a difference. But if not, you know, the F4i will suit you just fine there as well. So yeah, that's my impression. You know, and I know there are differences. I know the double R is technically a superior bike, better suspension, more power, better looks, all that jazz. I know that. But you know, the F4i, it does just fine. And, you know, one thing that I think people forget is that before Honda had the double R, the F4i for 2001 and 2002, that was the sportiest 600cc that they made. That was, in essence, the double R. Because the double R didn't come around until 2003. So, the F4i was the best that Honda could build at the time. And I just, you know, it's just so much bike. I really can't stress enough how great the value is for what you're getting here. I'd really recommend it to anybody looking for a 600. And this is kind of a whole nother can of worms, but it's sort of almost like, you know, the whole liter bike versus 600cc bike comparison. And you know, I'm not gonna get into that can of worms today, but sort of the same idea applies. You know, if you want to buy a 600RR, that's fine. They're great bikes. I had one. I can wholeheartedly recommend one. But the F4i is still plenty of motorcycle for your money, and you really don't need a RR to get this insane performance. I mean, I think people really forget, you know, this bike, this year F4i, it'll do 0 to 60 in first gear, less than 4 seconds. It'll do 0 to 100 in less than 8 seconds, of course, depending on how well you shift. So, I mean, you're still getting an insane amount of performance. And I just, you know, I can't stress enough how much value for money I feel like this F4i is. If you're looking for a street bike, a 600cc, I can recommend the F4i. I really strongly can. It's just a great bike for money, you know. It's been a good ride today. It's been a little bit unseasonably warm, but I guess I can't complain too much. Alright, here we go. Also today, guys, I am riding with my earplugs in, and if you haven't seen my video on it, definitely check it out. I'll post the link in the description. I only discovered it very recently, but it's something that I can wholeheartedly recommend. It's something that definitely makes riding more enjoyable for me. You can still hear everything, like this car coming up here. Still heard it pass. I can still hear my bike. I can still even hear the wind noise. You know, I can hear sirens. I can hear everything. It just sort of cranks the volume down a little bit. Which is good because, yeah, hearing loss from riding a motorcycle is definitely a serious thing. And wearing earplugs will definitely help to sort of stave that off. So, again, I can highly recommend it. Yeah, guys, that's really all I had for you this ride. Kind of running out of topics to talk about. I did a recent moto vlog where I took a nice long, like, 2-hour ride, and I covered a lot of topics. And I got some really great footage, but my mic, something was wrong with my mic cable, so I was not able to use any of the footage, which was so frustrating, but I'm kind of sort of going back through and recovering all those topics. But more to come in another ride, I suppose. But yeah, that's about all I got for you guys. Till next time, stay safe out there.